Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you're watching this video. This is CloudChartist with your weekly Ichimoku wrap-up for the week ending February 5th, 2016. It's Sunday the 7th, and we're going to start off looking at the ES. We see the ES put in a bearish candle last week. It did, however, continue to remain in its uptrend, as we did not put in a lower high. We put in a higher high and a higher low. So technically still an uptrend, but also technically still bearish, as in all ways Ichimoku, as the price is under the cloud, under the Tenkan-sen, under the Kijun-sen. If we see sellers when the market reopens next week, we can look to possibly test these prior lows around 1848. This other prior low around 1830. This wick goes all the way down to 1804. Just some other recent levels that we tested and found buyers. Otherwise, if we see price action to the upside, we will have resistance at the Tenkan-sen, which is currently at 1949.88 and could open up lower. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Tenkan-sen open up maybe around the 1930 area. But so Tenkan-sen will provide resistance to the upside. So wherever the Tenkan-sen is when the new candle opens up. Then we'll also have resistance at the Kijun-sen, this pink line above, and at the flat cloud. The flat cloud is currently at around 1972, and it's going to remain at 1972 all the way into April. So 1972 is an important resistance level for the ES going forward on the weekly time frame. All right. We do have a thin cloud. I've been mentioning this last few weeks. We do have a thin cloud coming up all the way from the third week in February until the beginning of the end of May, I should say. So this is an area where price could break through up and down in this area quite easily. Not a lot of resistance or support from the cloud here. There's a couple cloud twists too. Price action tends to go through the cloud at price twists, so keep that in mind as well. All right, let's move on to crude. CL has been driving the market. It's been pretty much driving the ES lately. There's been certain moments when the correlation has been lesser than other moments, but pretty much it's been driving the market a lot of times. It's also been acting as an anti-bund or anti-bond trade. When crude has been selling, the bonds have been bid, and vice versa. So anyway, crude put in a high last week of 34.18 and tested the Tenkan-sen, which is at 33.85, and tested over the Tenkan-sen, and then sold off and closed down here at 31 on the dot, which is interesting. But did technically get what I like to call the Tenkan smackdown. The Tenkan smackdown is when we have an existing downtrend, which is what we have here. We have a oversold bounce, which is we got some oversold readings here. We caught this bounce for these two green candles. Then we hit the Tenkan-sen and sold. Sold just a little on last week's candle, and then hit the Tenkan-sen again and sold off quite a lot on this week's candle. So this is, a classic Tenkan smackdown setup. We had another example of that right here, although we didn't make it all the way up to the Tenkan-sen, but we did get an oversold bounce here. We got an oversold bounce here also, and we got up to the Tenkan-sen and got the Tenkan smackdown here. So I hope you're understanding what the Tenkan smackdown is all about here. So as far as going forward, we do have some obvious buying support in this area, like underneath 30. 30 seems to be pretty well supported at the moment, so we'll see if that continues to be the case moving forward. And if we do find buyers, we will have resistance at the Tenkan-sen wherever that opens up, and I'm going to guess that it's going to open up a bit lower to reflect the downward price action of this last week's candle. Last week's candle was an inside candle, so the trend is technically still up for the moment on crude. So look to see wherever the Tenkan-sen opens, and that will offer resistance on the weekly time frame for light sweet crude oil. Let's move to some other indexes. Let's look at the NASDAQ, which got absolutely destroyed last week. A lot of big tech names selling off. So we had a very bearish candle as we saw rejection from the cloud and a complete trend reversal. We did put in a higher high before we sold off, so we do have an outside candle here. So technically doesn't change the trend, but we definitely went from neutral, where price action had closed in the cloud, to bearish. So we'll see what happens next week. We are bearish under the cloud. We do have a flat cloud above, could attract price. We have a rising cloud, so that's not particularly bearish, but price action being under the cloud is bearish. If we do see further selling in the NASDAQ, we could look to the Chicow here, this red line representing price action time shifted 26 periods into the past. If the Chicow comes down and finds support at the bottom of the cloud, that would be around the 3905 area next week, because you can see that we'll be moved over one candle. So actually that's right, it's actually lower. It's 3890 is the bottom of the cloud there, so you can look to that level to offer support, which is pretty far down there, so things will get pretty scary if we do hit that level. RSI is not yet oversold, so that's about it for the NASDAQ. Let's move on to the Dow. Dow technically still in an uptrend, as we made a higher high and a higher low for last week's candle. We did have a pretty decent bottoming candle on the Dow, as we saw a lot of buyers coming in. We didn't close nearly as low as we went. So that's kind of a good sign for the Dow, although we are technically bearish under the cloud, under the Tenkan-sen, under the Kijun-sen. We do have a bull-crossed Tenkan-sen over Kijun-sen, which is a pretty good sign, but it looks like the Tenkan-sen is creeping down, and that if we do see further selling, we could get a bear cross. Also, if we do see a lower Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen, those will provide resistance for price action going higher, and that could happen here. We have some horizontal support and resistance levels here. You can see from these prior candles at this same area here, so it'll be interesting to see if we can make it all the way up to the Kijun-sen, Tenkan-sen area here or not. But otherwise, bearish and always Ichimoku, but still an uptrend for the time being. Let's look at the Russell. Pardon my cat meowing in the background. He's probably going to try to scratch my monitor also. All right, looking at the Russell, we see that we had a nice uptrend prior to last week, and then we did have a reversal. Confirmed reversal. I believe that we did put in a lower low. So let's see, the low was last week was 983.30, and then, or 2 weeks ago, and then last week we had a low of 983.20, so just slightly lower. Basically bear flagging here underneath the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen. So if we do, so this is completely bearish in Ichimoku terms. If we do get a bounce, we could expect potential resistance at the Tenkan-sen. Wherever the Tenkan-sen opens up, I'm going to guess that it's going to be significantly lower, maybe around the 1055, 1060 area. That's just completely a guess, but we'll see what happens. But bearish, looking pretty bearish for the Russell. Let's look at gold. Gold made a huge move last week, and oops, pardon me, made its way into the cloud. So the week before, gold had found resistance exactly at the Kijun-sen here, this pink line here. Let me zoom in a little bit closer so you can see more easily. And that's a pretty significant show of resistance. So I was actually surprised to see gold go blasting into the cloud the way that it did. But it did indeed blast right into the cloud and came up to test these, or not quite to test, but almost to test these prior resistance levels here. So we do have prior resistance at, let's see, around 1177.30. We put in a high of 1174, high of 1175 last week. So we do have resistance slightly ahead. If we do continue higher, even above this prior resistance, then we will find resistance at the top of the cloud around 1190. So keep that level in mind. If we do see a reversal lower, we have support at the bottom of the cloud, and that's around the 1145 level. It's unusual for price action to put in such a bullish move into a cloud without some sort of pause. Cloud tends to slow down price action while price is inside it, so we'll see what happens. In the event that we do get a really strong move through the cloud, I would be cautious, as initial moves through the cloud after such bullish price action sometimes get rejected and sucked back into the cloud. So definitely keep an eye on this 1190 level if we go higher for gold next week. We do also have the Tenkan-sen looking for a potential bull cross over the Kijun-sen here after this bullish momentum to the upside. Let's look at silver. Silver also had a very bullish week last week and put in a close above the Kijun-sen, so it looks just like slightly behind gold in its move. It's possible that if we do see selling, that we could end up back under the Kijun-sen, so keep an eye on that 14.99 level, right around the 15 level. It's been sticky for a while. You can see all this prior resistance at this level. So we'll see what happens with silver, but it's still bearish under the cloud. So we will find resistance at the cloud if we do move higher for silver, or we should find resistance at the cloud. Gold didn't, but and that's at the 1569 area, thereabouts, 1570. Let's just take a quick, I don't usually do this, but let's look at copper. Copper did put in a spinning top type doji above the Tenkan-sen. This kind of candle could oftentimes signal a change of trend. So a change of trend, if we were to start selling again for copper, would be putting in a lower high and a lower low. So if we do see some selling with copper, keep an eye on that 2042 level that the Tenkan-sen's at. So far, it looks like the potential for a range trade between the 2.042 and the 2.2143 Kijun-sen up here is likely sideways range trade between the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen, since both the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen are flat and moving sideways here. The cloud is also sort of flat and moving sideways as well. All right, let's move on to some bonds. Let's look at the 30-year to start, ZB. Bonds put in yet another bullish candle. Just a slight topping tail, so just closed slightly under the highs. We're looking a bit extended. We're not quite overbought yet on the weekly time frame for ZB, but we are looking extended over the cloud. If we do see higher prices, we can look to these 165.27 highs. 160. Let's see where that one was. 166.21 was the high here previously, and then we have other, topping tails in the 165.15, 17 area. So look to those levels as potential double top type resistance. If we do go higher, if we do get a pullback, look for potential support at the Tenkan-sen wherever that happens to reopen. Looks like it's very, very likely that it will reopen higher, reflecting this strong momentum to the upside. Despite the strong momentum to the upside that the candles are showing here, the cloud is moving sideways. So that's why it's looking more extended over the cloud than as if the cloud was really supporting it. The cloud is still rising right now for the next into March on the weekly time frame. It's actually rising a little bit more for the next 2 weeks and then flattening off until the beginning of March, and then rising a little bit more and then flattening out for the first couple of weeks of April, and then dropping, and then getting very tight, reflecting the potential for very tight price action, then coming to a cloud twist where price action could potentially fall through from the upside or break through from the downside if we happen to be below the cloud. Let's look at the 10-year. The 10-year also looking quite bullish here, but also extended over the cloud. A bit of a topping tail put in last week. We do have this other area, which happens to be a fib around the 78.6 fib of this candle high to this candle low. That's an area of prior resistance, so do keep an eye on that 131.060 area if we do continue higher with the 10-year. Otherwise, if we do put in a reversal, we can look down to this 50% fib, that 128.060 level for potential support. That was a potential, a pivotal level in the past. And if not, and in fact, I wouldn't be surprised. Let me zoom in a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Tenkan Sen open up at exactly around that level, or maybe this 128.095 level that has proven itself to be a pivotal level also with these two candles in the past as well. So 128.060, 128.10, thereabouts, potential support if we do get a reversal lower. But so far we're still in an uptrend, and we would need a lower high and a lower low to confirm the reversal lower. All right, let's move on. Let's look at the Nikkei. Nikkei has been an important chart to have on your screen as been leading a bit. We see that the Nikkei last week had put in a bullish break into the cloud with its hammer candle, but had stopped right under the Tenkan Sen. And as I mentioned, breaks into the cloud are often rejected on the first try, so we did indeed get rejected, and we did get a Tenkan smackdown and saw price rejected right outside of the cloud very bearishly, and closed pretty close to the lows. If we do move lower, we could see the Chikou finding support at the bottom of the cloud, which would be around, let's say, 16,028. So check out that level if we do head lower. Otherwise, if we move higher, we're going to find some potential for resistance at the 177, the 17,700 level of the cloud right here. Let's take a look at the dollar. Did see some quite a bit of dollar selling last week, as we did see this potential reversal candle indeed show a reversal and confirm a reversal, I should say, with a lower high and a lower low. We saw sellers bring price all the way down into the cloud here. Let me zoom in a little bit. And then we got a bounce back as the Chikou, this red line here, held the Kijun Sen support. So you can see that as this red line is coming right into this pink line, that's where price ended up closing. So that's an important example of how the Kijun Sen interacting with its own elements over here can affect current price action. So for the time being, the dollar has proven that it did have support at the cloud, and is still technically bullish as it's over the cloud, and over the Kijun Sen. It would need to be back over the Tenkan Sen to be fully bullish. So we'll see. The Tenkan Sen will probably open lower, so we'll see where that opens, and then we'll see if price can indeed get back over the Tenkan Sen on its way back up if it does bounce. If we see lower prices, we can expect for the potential for support to come in again at the Kijun Sen here at 96.56, or the top of the cloud at around 96.40. Let's look at Let's look at dollar yen. Dollar yen is neutral inside the cloud. We did see a bearish reversal that just completely blasted through the Kijun Sen and the Tenkan Sen, but we did come down to this prior support area. So, and this is the new candle open up here, this little green nubbin. So it looks like we could see a bounce back higher for dollar yen so far, as long as we continue to hold these lows here. You see the Chikou is bouncing a little bit right here. And this is, you know, we'd seen this area as a prior support area many times, so it seems like the 116.90s are supportive for the dollar yen for the time being. So if we do move higher, we could be attracted to this flat Tenkan Sen above it at 119.76, and if I was interested in putting out a long trade, that would probably be my target area for the time being. But overall, it's neutral inside the cloud. I'm going to not go over a lot of FX and move to some grains instead. Let's look at corn. Doing very small moves inside a range here, inside the range between the Tenkan Sen and the Kijun Sen, as I think I suggested the possibility for last week, just a little range trade sideways. So far, we did hold the Tenkan Sen at 365.25. So we could get a bounce higher, but the bounce probably will be contained by the Kijun Sen to the upside at 375.25. I expect to see similar moves for soybeans. Similar sort of range trade, but we did close under the Tenkan Sen for soybeans, so less bullish than corn, but this is a prior support and resistance area where we did find buyers coming in on soybeans, so we could see another range trade move up. We're sort of in doing some sort of triangle type action I think you might be able to see on soybeans. Let's look at wheat. Wheat looking a little bit more bearish than soybeans and corn here, as we saw the Tenkan Sen reject price and a close closer to the lows here. So if anything, of all the three that we looked at, wheat looks the most bearish, and the potential for price moving lower looks greater to me. But we do have prior support in this area, so we'll see what happens. Look at oats. Oats look like they're coming into a bear flag breakdown to me here. We're not yet oversold, and we are seeming to lose this prior support area. So looks pretty bearish for oats here at the moment. Let's look at live cattle. And by the way, if there's any charts that I don't go over on my weekly Ichimoku wrap that you're personally interested in, feel free to hit me up on Twitter and request those charts, because I would be happy to include them in my video for you. Live cattle found resistance at the Kijun Sen up here at 135.88 and reversed. We're still in an uptrend with a higher high and a higher low, but we could be in for a range trade on live cattle between the Tenkan Sen at 129.925 and the Kijun Sen at 135.88, unless we put in a close above or below either one of those. Let's take a look at lean hogs. Similar to live cattle, let me zoom in a little bit closer. We did find price got rejected and closed underneath the Kijun Sen here. So looks like the potential for reversal is here, and potential for price moving lower back to the flat Tenkan Sen below at 60.42.5 is there. But we do have some bottoming tails, so we could just continue the uptrend here. We'll see what happens. Kijun Sen at 65.35 is important here as potential resistance. If we do move higher, let's look at coffee. Coffee did put in a close above the Tenkan Sen in this continuing range trade, so we do have a bit of a long topping tail on coffee, but we could, if we do, since we are in an uptrend and we are Did put in a close over the Tenkan-sen. They think that the chance of us testing the Kijun-sen above is legit. 125.93 above if we do start moving higher on coffee, and then the potential for support at the Tenkan-sen is there at 119.68. Let's see if there's anything else. I think I will end it there. If you have any, as I said before, if you have any requests, hit me up on Twitter. I'd be happy to post some charts. Thank you for watching my video. If you're interested in learning Ichimoku and you'd like to find out more, you can email me, cloudchartist@gmail.com, or check out my website at cloudchartist.com. Thanks again, and good luck this week.